Today I'm going to be presenting Emily Dickinson. Maybe, yeah. Emily Dickinson was born on December 10th in 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. She was the second of three children. For the first 9 years of her life, she grew up in a mansion that her family had built, but shortly after her birth, her family went bankrupt. Dickinson's father was a treasurer of Amherst College, which had been founded by Dickinson's paternal grandfather. Her father was also elected to one term in Congress. Her mother was a stay-at-home mom. Emily Dickinson attended the co-educational Amherst Academy and eventually left home to attend Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, which is now Mount Holyoke College in South Hadley. She did not return for a second year as the school had strict religious practices. Emily Dickinson was a Calvinist. It is a faith centered on the belief that humans are born totally depraved and can be saved only if they undergo life-altering conversion in which they accept the vicarious sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Dickinson questioned this after leaving Mount Holyoke, which led her to be the first in her family to not experience conversion, or go to the Amherst First Congregational Church. Dickinson was influenced by the transcendentalism of Ralph Emerson, who is pictured right there, and the mid-century tendencies of liberal Protestant orthodoxy. In 1855, Dickinson left her home that she had lived in for 15 years to move back into the Dickinson mansion that I previously mentioned. She lived there from then on into the rest of her life. From that point, the house still stands today and is visited by many people who loved Emily Dickinson. She had always been a homebody, but in 1855, her mother fell sick and continued to be sick until 1859. Therefore, both of the daughters found themselves stuck at home more and caring for their mother. Dickinson's brother married Susan Huntington Gilbert Dickinson. She was also a poet, and her and Emily shared great interests. Dickinson would share multiple poems with her sister-in-law for years to come. When Dickinson's father passed away in 1874, she had found a new openness to writing poetry. In her last 15 years of life, Dickinson averaged about 35 poems a year. So these are a few of her poems that she had written. It was said that she wrote about 1800, but I just got a few of them in here. So I will read a few of them off. If I should die. If I should die and you should live, and time should gurgle on, and morn should beam and noon should burn, as it has usual done. If birds should build as early, and bees are bustling go, one might depart at option from enterprise below. 'Tis sweet to know that stocks will stand when we with daisies lie, that commerce will continue and trades will briskly fly. It makes the parting tranquil and keeps the soul serene, that gentle souls sprightly conduct the pleasing scene. The other one I will read is I could suffice for him I knew. I could suffice for him I knew, he could suffice for me, yet hesitating fractions both surveyed infinity. Would I be whole, he said and broached, my syllable rebelled. 'Twas face to face with nature forced, 'twas face to face with God, withdrew the sun to other wests, withdrew the furthest star. Before decision, stop to speech, and then be all to blur. The answer of the sea unto the motion of the moon, excuse me, herself adjust her tides unto. Could I do else with mine? The other one I will read is to make a prairie. To make a prairie, it takes a clover and one bee, one clover and a bee, and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few. So Emily Dickinson's writing started in her form of letters until she was in her mid-20s. In fact, from the age of 11 and onward, a large amount of those letters have been preserved. Much of Dickinson's writing stems from her own feelings at the moment, especially with the loss of her friends, whether it is death or because of fate. Her writing comes from a feeling of abandonment. Her feminist title stems from her writing that refused to conform to religion, gender, and marriage. She challenged gender in her poems. Occasionally, she would refer to herself as boy, excuse me, prince, earl, or duke. Emily Dickinson's poetry was not published until shortly after her death, after her sister had found many poems. It said that she had wrote an estimated 1,800 poems. Excuse me. Emily Emily Dickinson's poetry was different from the usual form of rhyming poetry. Her poems were off rhymes. They influenced a new age of poetry. She ignored the usual guidelines of versification and grammar. This made her work bold and original. The summer of 1858, when she took off with her work, she began assembling manuscript books and many copies of her poems on good quality stationery. Over the next 7 years, she had made 40 booklets. So Emily Dickinson was never married. Her poems told her readers as she was very open about her love life. Although it never was said, but there was skepticism that her sister-in-law Susan Gilbert Dickinson and herself were possibly secret romantic partners. Susan Dickinson was one of Emily Dickinson's main readers and mentors. So I've written down just 4 of her famous lines of poetry. The first one, tell the truth, but tell it slant. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. Success is counted sweetest by those who never succeed. Morning without you is a dwindled dawn. So many of Emily Dickinson's closest friends and family had died around her. Her dad in 1874, her mother in 1882, and many of her friends that I had listed there. The death of her 8-year-old nephew Gilbert in 1883 was one of her worst deaths she had to deal with. Because of all of this, her grief was very strong, which led her to be very socially withdrawn now more than ever. There's also indications in her poetry that she may have struggled with depression. And in 1886, Emily died at the age of 55 due to a stroke. Emily Dickinson's poetic manuscripts now belong to Harvard University's Houghton Library, as well as Amherst College Library. Mabel Loomis Todd and Thomas Wentworth Higginson had taken into editing her collection. They invented titles and regularized grammar and rhyme. Dickinson's poetry was a turning point for poetry, as it challenged the regular form of poetry. Her writing has now been taken to create plays and films. She has a museum dedicated to herself that was founded in 2003. And those 2 pictures there are just pictures of her room in her museum. Thank you so much for watching. Here's my works cited. Sorry for the coughing. I'm a bit sick right now, but I hope you enjoyed.